You ended up rowing with Greg, with your brother, for the first time, straight out of juniors in 1990. Was that a kind of fulfilment of an ambition, or were you aware then you were going to do stuff together after that?
Yeah, I guess at some early stage, he won the juniors when he was young, 16. He was a junior gold medalist, and I guess at the time I thought it'd be fun to row with him. Hopefully, I think I even said maybe some interviewed in the paper or something when I was 18, maybe some point at university, what do I want to do in rowing? And I said I want to win a gold medal with my brother. And I guess I recognised that he was good and strong and big, and we obviously got on well, and so it was we'd actually done one of the winter trials when he was at school and I was at university, and we just jumped in on the day and come quite high. I think we'd been third or fourth in the heavyweight, the national team trial. So we were fairly quick. Yeah, no, it was really nice to row with him. I mean, he did the juniors in July and then got in the 8 in November, if you remember, because it was late in the year.
He got dropped. James Cracknell got dropped for Greg, which is something that
91. I was 91. Yeah.
I was 91. Sorry, because Greg was in the 4 in 91, wasn't he? And then and James was in the 8 for Henley.
Well, I can't remember what they called, the VO2 4 or something, weren't they? I can't remember the 4 that got selected because they had the biggest VO2 maxes or something, and then there were 2 others. Now I remember. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Yeah. But yeah, that's right. So James raced the Grand with us, if you remember.
Yeah.
And then Greg came in the 8. Well, I don't think he got dropped. I think they put James in the 4 because he could stroke it. It was sort of slightly the. I thought was the theory.
I think talking to Crackers, he still holds a bit of resentment for that decision.
I guess that's the thing sometimes about rowing. We've got sort of long memories of these little incidents that happen some point in our life. Someone one day said you can't do that, and it's like a thing that fires people up for years.
Yeah.
So I mean, James took a long time. He had some unlucky breaks early on, I think, didn't he? It took him a while, and then he was so determined to be good. I always admire his commitment, his determination to come through. Because you think about it, he was at 91. He was first in the team, so 2 Olympics before he won a medal. I think his first gold was 97, wasn't it? And then you think about his amazing career and all the stuff he's done. Really, really inspirational to believe in himself and keep going and find a way.
Is it you or is it Greg that tells the story? When we won that bronze in Vienna, which was great, but you kind of looked on the landing stage at how exhausted was it the Germans who won were?
Yeah.
And kind of thought, why aren't we like that? Or
yeah, I suppose I remember thinking. I think you have these false memories, but my memory was there was only 6 of them there. That a couple of them were in the tent, on oxygen type stuff. I may have misremembered that. They were certainly all sitting down there. We hadn't been that far, but we were half a length, 2/3 behind, and I took some inspiration from just that level of commitment that they made. Not that we didn't row hard, but I just it just felt like that was as much as anything. I think I've got that photo. That photo we have of us winning the bronze. We're all looking super happy.
Yeah.
And actually, I've seen that photo, and I know I wasn't that happy because I got a bronze, and I'd been 4th the year before. So I love being in the crew, but there was definitely a bit of me that was a bit disappointed at some level that this journey towards the gold wasn't quite there. So I suppose it was that. It looked like they'd raced because they thought they could win the gold and wanted to win the gold, and that was their aspiration. And I don't know. I can't speak for everyone else in that age, but it felt like we probably hadn't quite had that win or lose type.
Yeah. Was there a moment? Did you have a meeting with you and Greg that you decided, right, we're going for the pair now? In that season, was there a moment where that decision came about, or did it evolve?
I think if you remember, it evolved. We started off training the pair because there was a bit of, let's take control of our own destiny. But I do remember a conversation. I had a conversation with Marty who was coaching. You remember in about October that year, and we were talking about the 8 because remember we were training in the 8 in the winter in 91, leading up to 92 because it looked like that might be what we did. And I remember Marty saying, he was pretty sure that we could get the silver. because we got the bronze in '91. I remember him saying, "Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure we can get the silver this year." And that is like he dropped something on the floor. Kind of, I was like, "No, that's not working for me. I don't want to go bronze, fourth, bronze, silver. That's not what I want." So I think there was definitely a bit of awakening that, I'd rather try and get the gold and lose, if you like. So there was a bit of a mind shift there of being in a boat that was led by someone that was success for them. I mean, obviously he went on and won gold medals and super success. So there's no comment on him generally. Just that conversation was a bit of a trigger point for me to really double down on being in a boat that it's just people with the same goal.
And you guys targeted your opposition, Matthew Pinsent and Steve Redgrave, and even to the extent of having pictures on your fridge that winter.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We were very young, and we had pictures of them on the fridge all winter with messages that we thought were funny about them. I can't remember. I think it was a Muhammad Ali quote. It was the one about he said something to someone like, "You're too ugly to be world champion. The world champion should be pretty like me." That was one. That's one of the quotes. That was one of the more polite ones, something like that. So we had it in mind that if we could beat them at the April trials, that would set us up. I mean, we hoped to row the Coxed Spare at the Olympics. That was how we started off thinking. So they were very much in mind that beating them at the April trials was our target for the winter to set us up.
What do you remember of that race, John? That April trials race? Because I was in the same race with Tim Foster, but didn't see you much after the first 500 meters. You were flying.
Yeah, no, I think that was probably the best we ever rode in the pair. I mean, we had a most amazing row. We had this thing that we didn't think Steve liked. He'd like to lead. We knew he'd like to lead and get out and dominate. And so we had a thing that we wanted to try and stay really close, so they couldn't really settle and just sit on top of us. So we went off quite hard, and I remember overlapping them and just feeling like, okay, we're in a good rhythm, and they hadn't got far. And I think we probably rode through them at about 1,000. My memory is we got through them at about 1,000. We were just flying, and so I remember that bit. And then the last 250, I remember yelling at them.
Oh, you did.
In a very unsporting way. I mean, we were big rivals. They probably didn't think of us as rivals. But we certainly did of them. So those are the two bits I remember. And then I had a bit of a rib injury, I think, after that. So that was my memory. That we just flew that day, and it was we'd had some help with Fred Smallbone had done a little bit of coaching, and I think he helped us just with the boat feel. It sounds kind of weird. Can you hear anything?
Yeah, that's good. Fine. Got a little bit.
So we had Steve Gunn coaching us a lot in the winter, and then he was away, and so Fred Smallbone just helped us for a couple of weeks, and that combination of sort of technical movement, Fred had just helped us a little bit get the feel for the boat, and I think we really had a nice feel for the boat that day, and we just were, anyway, it's a great row. That's what I remember.
Yeah. And then the Coxed pair evolved. You had a race off with Steve at a regatta. Was it in Cologne? And you guys missed the start, so they kind of won by default. And then the Coxed pair opened up with you and Greg. Yeah,
we had this race off that didn't really ever happen because we didn't manage to get in a race together. And I think that there was a view taken. We had rode the Coxed pair once at Cologne and done quite well. So I guess the view was, there's no point spending the season these two pairs racing each other. They were the world champions, and I guess it made sense for someone to put them in the Coxed pair, and we went off to try the Coxed pair. Yeah.
I'm just going to take a little break from looking at your racing career now, because you don't sort of come across one thinks of Coxed pair rowers as big sort of 100+ kilo, maybe 2 meter tall bruisers, and rowing that event. But your physiology is very different to that.
How have you met Greg?
Well, I was interested because Jurgen, when I did an interview with Jurgen Grobler, he was actually very complimentary to you. In fact, I think he mentioned your name more than any other rower in terms of, what he had to learn, because, you weren't that type of big bruiser, but you could still adapt to rowing in the Coxed pair.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things there. One, we've talked about this. Maybe we'll touch on it later. But this whole thing about how big you are in your ergo score. So I think people used to tend to look at people's ergo score. When ergos first came along, people just looked at the ergo score, and there was this idea that someone pulled a big ergo score, they were a better rower. If you don't factor in how much someone weighs, the score on the ergo is not relevant. So I wasn't the best ergo puller. I was quite low down, but I was only 84 kilos, so I raced at 84 kilos. So my power to weight was quite good. So I don't think I was quite as weak as he thinks I am, if that makes sense. I think in terms of my power to weight, I wasn't the worst. Greg is obviously phenomenal physiologically. So between us, we had quite a good amount of power for how much we weighed. I think I'd probably, was able to connect with Greg and communicate with him so that we got the best out of each other. And I recognise now I've got a reasonably nice feel for the boat and moving at the right time with the boat. So I was going to be, simplify it. I was quite good at keeping the boat level and encouraging Greg. So
yeah. So I'm just going to take a little detour there to talk about, power related ergo tests, which you mentioned just there, before we go back into maybe look at that Olympic race in 1992. What do you recommend people should do in terms of the ergo around their weight and power, and how important is it to do these weight adjusted ergos?
Well, for me, I don't. If you're doing any kind of comparison on ergos, if you don't factor in how much someone weighs, I would go as far as say it's meaningless. It's not quite meaningless, but it's really not very valid, because in simple terms, if you go in a single scull, if I weigh 80 and someone else weighs 90, an 80 kilo person who puts 10 kilos in the bottom of the boat, take it to extreme. If you're 70 kilos or 90 kilos, put a 20 kilo thing in the bottom of your boat. You need a lot more power to move the boat along now. So without factoring in how much someone weighs and taking down the scores of the big people or lifting up the scores of the smaller people, you can't get any kind of comparison for what that power means in a boat. So to give an example, there's lots of talk. A guy like Stan, who rode in the British team. Was he around for 15 minutes for? Hamish Bond, I guess, is the real obvious one. He's a guy who's pulled 548, and he weighs 83 kilos. This is phenomenal. When you start adjusting around what is that at 90 kilos, or his score comes down 4, 5, 6 seconds. He's an incredible athlete on that power adjusted. And I don't know if you remember, there was a guy called Sikowski, was it?
Matthias Sikowski, yeah.
Phenomenal ergo puller, and we were all, he beat the world record, and we were all looking, and why couldn't he move the boat? And the reason he couldn't move the boat is because he weighed 120 kilos. So it wasn't that he couldn't row very well. He had to carry a Cox compared to a lot of the people he was racing. If he was racing in a single against a lightweight, it'd be like a Cox single against the So
what is the formula? I mean, how can people get hold of a formula to kind of put in their weight and test it out? I mean, is it something you developed, or? So there's a nice paper, if you want to read a bit of science, by a guy called I can't remember what his second name is. Anu, I think is his first name. ANU, who's an Oxford lightweight. There's a paper on the internet you can find, and he goes through all the physics of it, because it's broadly to do with the shape of the hull and the drag in the water, and how that's not a linear relationship. So if you want to get into the physics, it starts off by explaining the physics of it, and then it gets into some formulas, the adjustment formula in there. So there's a paper, if you look up, or lightweight. I don't know if there's a way to I can circulate the paper afterwards, but that was the start point that I used. I think it's called Anu. He was an Oxford lightweight. Paper on power to weight ergos or something. If you do some Google searches around that, you'll find it. I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I worked out based on those principles.
if I was going to really simplify it, I adjust by about 0.17 second per 500 per kilogram for heavyweight or for men, and it's about 0.19 second for women per 500 per kilogram. And it's not because any difference because they're men or women. It's just if you think about the speed that a woman might row 1,000 in the 2K in 6:30 at the top end, and a man might row in 5:30 at the top end. So it's nothing to do with there's any biological difference. It's simply the speed difference. But a real rough rule of thumb might be 0.2 of a second for average, club rower, perhaps 0.2 of a second per 500 per kilo. And you just pick a weight that you want to standardize around. So pick 90 kilos, and if people are above it, you bring their scores down, and if they're below it, you bring their scores up, and then you get a common point.
Do you think there's enough notice taken of that in international rowing world by coaches? I mean, I'm not sure Jürgen Grobler, maybe he did operate that as a rule.
I think there are some. I mean, certainly I've heard that Brooks, I mean, they as I understand it, they're very into that, understanding people's weight and power adjusting the weight. I think I've seen the Dutch, I believe, do it. I think I've seen Australia. I think Australia, they're aware of that. I think it's. I honestly, I don't know who thinks about it. I know Oxford look at it. I just think if you're just looking at raw ergo data without factoring in the weights, right? I know I'm a bit messianic about this, but if you're not factoring in weight into those ergo scores, it's relatively meaningless to try and translate that fitness to what they'll do in a boat. And that I think when people come up with these stories like there's a lightweight way of rowing and a heavyweight way of rowing and things like this, they come up with these stories because they're trying to understand why do these people who seem to be fitter not go as fast as the other people. The reason is because they're carrying 20 kilos less in the boat. It's not because there's some magical way of rowing if you're a lightweight or a heavyweight. Some heavyweights row well, some lightweights row well.
So you guys were lighter than the Abbagnales who you raced in that '92 Olympic race. I'm guessing. They were reasonably tall, but very sort of broad.
I'm quite good at spotting how much I think people. They were. What would I guess they were? They were probably 92, 93 kilo average. That would be my guess, and we were probably about 90, 88, 89.
And the Romanians were definitely bigger than you as a combination.
Yeah.
In that race.
We were quite strong. Greg was particularly strong. I think he might have beaten the world record on the erg that year, or 5:42 or something. I think that was 1992. He was incredible. It was an incredible athlete.
So from early on in that season, it was always about winning the gold medal in the Olympics in the Coxed pair for you.
I think certainly when I started in the winter, it was about winning the gold medal. So I sat there in the gym doing my leg press, imagining sometimes I was beating the German 8, and sometimes we were beating the Abbagnales, and sometimes it was Steve and Matthew. The vision was to stand as you'd done, looking at the flag, singing the national anthem, feeling that thing of being the best in the world. So I was a bit agnostic about what boat it was from the winter. I wanted to do it with Greg. And I guess as the season progressed, it became, more focused. Once we're in the Coxed pair, it was about, winning and losing. And our coach, Steve Gunn, we'd been with him a long time. He was also, we were all really aligned around this win or lose type.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about Jürgen the other day, and I saw that interview and thinking about him, and I have a feeling, I thought that's a big thing that he brought to British rowing, a sort of. His real focus is on can people win a gold medal here? That was his focus. So sometimes, people often view coaches and try to understand what's going on, why have they done this, why have they that. But I think if you understand with Jürgen, he's about winning gold medals. He's about winning, and that I think was a key element. What can I say? If you don't often see people surprised to win. You sometimes see disappointed silver medalists and disappointed bronze medalists. You might see happy and surprised bronze and silver medalists. You don't often someone see winning a gold medal and say, "Well, I never expected that." I mean, occasionally, but very often, people, if you nail it down, you say, this is what I want to do, and maybe I won't achieve it, but that's what I'm going for.